Welcome to Middle East Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Brazil's president accuses Israel of committing genocide in Gaza, doubling down after earlier uproar. Houthi attack on Red Sea ship causes massive oil slick. Photos: Palestinians cling to life in Gaza's Rafah. Oil slick in the Red Sea from a British-owned ship attack by Yemen's Houthis, U.S. military says. Investors flee tumbling EV upstarts once hailed as next Tesla. Brazil's president accuses Israel of committing genocide in Gaza, doubling down after earlier uproar. Associated Press. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has accused Israel of committing genocide against Palestinians, following controversial comments last week in which he compared Israel's military offensive in Gaza to the Nazi Holocaust. Israel has strongly denied these allegations, stating that its war is targeting the militant group Hamas, not the Palestinian people. The health ministry in Gaza has reported that the overall death toll in nearly 5 months of war has risen to 29,606, with nearly 70,000 wounded. Negotiators from the US, Israel, Egypt, and Qatar are meeting in Paris to discuss a potential ceasefire. Brazil's president has refused to retract his comments and Israel has declared him a persona non grata. Houthi attack on Red Sea ship causes massive oil slick. Deutsche Welle. A UK-owned ship was attacked by Houthi rebels last week, causing an 18-mile oil spill in the Red Sea, according to the US military. The vessel, called the Ruby Mar, was transporting over 41,000 tons of fertilizer and suffered significant damage in the attack. The U.S. Central Command warned that the spill could worsen an ongoing environmental disaster in the Red Sea. In a separate statement, CENTCOM said that its forces destroyed 7 mobile anti-ship cruise missiles in Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen on Friday. The Houthi rebels have vowed to attack shipping in the Red Sea linked to Israel, although many of the ships targeted have no connection to Israel. As a result of the attacks, major shipping companies are avoiding the Red Sea and Suez Canal, adding around $1 million to costs. Photos: Palestinians cling to life in Gaza's Rafah. Al Jazeera. The southernmost Gazan city of Rafah has become a focal point in the Israeli ground offensive on Gaza. The city has swelled in size in recent weeks as hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians have fled there. United Nations officials warn that an attack on Rafah will be catastrophic, with more than 600,000 children in the path of an assault. A move on the town and surrounding area could also cause the collapse of the humanitarian aid system struggling to keep Gaza's population alive. However, Israel says it must take Rafah to ensure the destruction of Hamas and the freeing of Israeli hostages still held by them. Oil slick in the Red Sea from a British-owned ship attack by Yemen's Houthis, U.S. military says. Associated Press. A Yemeni Houthi attack on a Belize-flagged ship earlier this month caused an 18-mile, 29-kilometer, oil slick, the U.S. military has warned. It also warned of the danger of a spill from the vessel's cargo of fertilizer. The missile attack forced the crew to abandon the vessel, which had been on its way to Bulgaria after leaving Corfacan in the United Arab Emirates. It was transporting more than 41,000 tons of fertilizer, U.S. Central Command said in a statement. Investors flee tumbling EV upstarts once hailed as next Tesla. Bloomberg. Investors have lost confidence in electric vehicle, EV, makers Rivian and Lucid after the companies forecasted lower-than-expected production figures. Rivian, which is backed by Amazon, said it would keep production at 2023 levels and shrink its workforce, while Lucid, which is majority-owned by Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, projected only a slight increase in output over 2023. Shares of both companies have fallen sharply since October, when Tesla warned of sagging interest in EVs, with Rivian down 44% and Lucid down 33% in the period. Both companies are also worth a fraction of their 2021 valuations. Gaza desperately needs more aid but agencies can't cope. BBC. The Gaza Strip is on the brink of a humanitarian crisis as the Israeli military assault continues to devastate the area. Aid agencies are struggling to cope with the situation, with the population of around 300,000 people in northern Gaza reduced to a feral existence due to the lack of shops and aid. In the south, hundreds of thousands of people are displaced and constantly on the move, desperately searching for food, shelter, and safety. Aid trucks are being attacked and looted by angry mobs, and the collapse of security means that many of the aid deliveries never actually reach the people who need them. Trucks are looted inside the corridor leading to Gaza, and the aid often ends up being sold on the black market rather than being distributed to those in need. The UN is working to try and increase the volume of aid entering Gaza in the hope that this will reduce the incentives for looting. However, Israel says that it is doing everything it can to facilitate the arrival of humanitarian assistance, and blames the problems with aid distribution on delays on the Palestinian side. U.S. warns of disaster amid oil slick in Red Sea from ship hit by Houthis. Al Jazeera. The U.S. military has warned of an environmental disaster after an attack by Yemen's Houthi rebels on a cargo ship caused an oil slick in the Red Sea. The ship, the Ruby Mar, was hit by multiple missiles while sailing through the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. The vessel, which was transporting more than 41,000 tons of fertilizer, is now anchored but slowly taking on water, causing a 29-kilometer oil slick. The U.S. military has carried out self-defense strikes on Houthi-controlled positions in Yemen, destroying 7 mobile anti-ship cruise missiles. A Gaza doctor's fear, displacement, detention, or death. Washington Post. 4 months of the most grueling and gruesome work of his life saw the anesthesiologist staying at his post at Nasser Hospital last month when Israeli tanks closed in. He felt he had one of 3 fates in wartime Gaza: displacement, detention, or death. He had seen Israeli forces disappear doctors during raids on the enclave's besieged and collapsing hospitals. Fears of being accused of supporting Hamas, being made to strip and sit blindfolded, seeing photos of the humiliation shared online were further reasons to leave. Ultimately, he fled the hospital on January 26 and joined the Gaza Strip's growing cadre of displaced medical workers. More than 100 medical professionals are in Israeli detention, their exact whereabouts and condition unknown, according to the health ministry. The rest are most likely displaced. Like the rest of the population, most doctors in north and central Gaza, scenes of the fiercest fighting for much of the war, have fled their homes and communities for the south. Most live in tents, where they are receiving partial or no salaries, and devote their days to trying to find food and water to survive. Many fear returning to the medical sector and its acute crises. Gaza's 2.1 million people are on the brink of famine, according to the United Nations, and infectious diseases are spreading. Ultimately, analysts and aid workers warn, hunger and disease could kill more people in the conflict than Israeli weapons. Our bodies know the pain, why Norway's reindeer herders want Gaza peace. Al Jazeera. The Sami, Europe's oldest and last remaining indigenous people, are emerging as vocal advocates for the Palestinian cause. The Sami people have faced threats from borders, land seizures, construction projects dedicated to extracting natural resources, and systematic discrimination, which has led them to identify with the struggles faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and the occupied West Bank. The Sami people launched regular protests in Oslo against the war in Gaza, with mass demonstrations calling for an immediate ceasefire. The Sami have also used social media platforms to educate others about greenwashing and share stories from Gaza as part of a movement against colonialism. Sanitation crisis in Gaza spreads disease. New York Times. The article discusses the dire living conditions faced by displaced Palestinians in Gaza. Many of them are living in tents and are struggling with hunger, cold, and a sanitation crisis. The lack of sufficient toilets and clean water, as well as open sewage, have become major problems for these displaced Palestinians. Many have had to wait in long lines to use dirty toilets shared with thousands of other people, while others have resorted to cutting back on eating and drinking to avoid using the toilet altogether. Some have even resorted to using makeshift toilets behind their tents. Dear viewers, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the sixth dimension. Today, we have some interesting news to discuss, ranging from international conflicts to the struggles of displaced populations. So, let's dive right in. First, we have Brazil's president accusing Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. This accusation has caused quite a stir, with Israel strongly denying the allegations. The conflict in Gaza continues to escalate, with a rising death toll and negotiations for a potential ceasefire underway. It's a complex situation, and the comments made by Brazil's president have only added fuel to the fire. Next, we learn about a Houthi attack on a ship in the Red Sea, causing a massive oil slick. This attack not only poses an environmental threat but also disrupts shipping routes and increases costs for major shipping companies. The Houthi rebels have been targeting ships in the Red Sea, even those with no connection to Israel. It's a concerning development that needs to be addressed. Moving on, we see the desperate situation in Gaza, particularly in the city of Rafah. The Israeli ground offensive has put hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians at risk, and United Nations officials warn of a catastrophic outcome if an attack on Rafah occurs. The humanitarian aid system is already struggling to keep Gaza's population alive, and a move on Rafah could further exacerbate the situation. In another incident, a Yemeni Houthi attack on a British-owned ship has caused an oil slick in the Red Sea. This attack highlights the ongoing conflict in Yemen and its repercussions on international shipping routes. It's a reminder of the far-reaching consequences of regional conflicts. Shifting gears, we turn our attention to the struggles of electric vehicle (EV) makers Rivian and Lucid. These companies, once hailed as the next Tesla, have seen a loss of investor confidence due to lower than expected production figures. The EV industry is highly competitive, and it seems that investors are becoming more cautious in their expectations. Lastly, we learn about the dire situation in Gaza, where aid agencies are struggling to cope with the ongoing military assault. The lack of shops and aid has reduced the population to a feral existence, and the collapse of security has led to looting and a failure in aid distribution. The UN is working to increase the volume of aid, but challenges persist on both sides of the conflict. In conclusion, these news stories highlight the complexities and challenges faced in various parts of the world. International conflicts, environmental disasters, and humanitarian crises are ongoing issues that require thoughtful consideration and effective solutions. As always, I encourage you, our viewers, to share your thoughts and ideas on these topics. What do you think about the situation in Gaza, the Houthi attacks, or the struggles of EV makers? Let's engage in a lively discussion and work towards a better understanding of these complex issues. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Yours in observation, Dr. Six. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.